Hey everybody, the goal of this tutorial is to get you up and running with some first principles in Substance Designer so that you can quickly make your own graphs independently. So first things first, we're going to go File and New Substance. You're going to see a lot of options here. We're looking for physically based, so and we're going to pick metallic and roughness. Now I'm going to name this sci-fi _box. And we're going to leave all of the other settings regular, except for we're going to leave all of the other settings regular. 2048 pixels by 2048 pixels for the width and the height. We're going to hit OK, and that's going to make us a brand new graph with a couple of outputs. Now, the first thing about Substance Designer is that these outputs that we've created are going to project onto our 3D cube in the bottom menu. So right now we have an empty base color, an empty normal, an empty roughness, an empty metallic, and an empty height map. So first things first, what we're going to do is we're going to raise up the base color, we're going to click it, and then we're going to hit Control D, which is going to make a second base color. This is actually just the second output node. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go down to the usage bar here and switch this to ambient occlusion. And then we're going to rename the identifier AO, and the label also is going to be changed to AO, just so we can recognize it. And you'll see that changes from base color to AO. I'm actually going to put the base color above the AO. Yes. And I'm going to quickly put the height in between the normal and the roughness. So, one of the first things that we want to do is to switch this so that most of the information channels are not fully empty right off the hop. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit our space bar, and that's going to open up this is a lot like the Shift A menu in Blender. It opens up a panel of nodes that you can add, and literally you can search anything that's in the program and this will pop up in here and it will add it to your graph. You can also drag and drop them from the left menu, but I and most other people prefer to hit space. And we're going to type in just uni to get uniform color. Once we have that, we're going to plug that into the base color, and really quickly I'm going to adjust this with the V label down here to a medium gray, and that's going to make the base color, if we right click anywhere on the screen, view outputs in 3D, so we see everything is blank. Right now there's nothing to show the color on it because we have empty spaces in all of the other graphs. So really quickly what we're going to do is I'm going to Control D, get the same uniform color, bring it down, and I'm going to put that on the roughness, and I'm also going to put a medium color onto the metallic. From there, what I think we're going to do, we're going to type in AMB, and that's going to bring up our AO map right here, which we're going to need. And I think, yep, that should bring up our nice clean gray empty slate cube here. If you don't see this particular cube, you can hit the scene here and check rounded cube, and that will bring it up. We're also going to do the same thing with normal. So we're going to open up this, and the first one that you see here is normal, and we're just going to plug that into the normal map just so that we got some information going. We'll later fix those, but right now for the setup we're just trying to get things so that we can see them in our viewer so that we can see what we're doing. So one thing you may have noticed with these is some of them are yellow and some of them are gray. What the yellow one means is that they're RGB color, which means that they contain color information. You cannot plug something that needs color information, or you cannot plug something that's giving gray information into something that needs color information, and you also can't do vice versa. You have to convert it in this program. So one thing I'm going to show you really quick is if we wanted to plug this gray into this normal, we get a red because it can't do it. So there are two ways to fix this. I'm going to show you the first one. We're going to click not gradient map, sorry. We're going to do convert and grayscale conversion. And this will cause it to, this converts to grayscale. Now, this is just for teaching purposes. We don't necessarily have to use that there. I'm actually going to delete this. And I'm going to click the uniform color, and I'm just going to click grayscale. And that's going to switch. So now we are in grayscale information. And that's just fine for our purposes for now. We'll be switching most of these later. But for now, we can see our cube, which is really what we wanted. Another thing that we're going to do really quickly is we're going to go into Materials, Default, Definitions, and we're going to go down to the one that's already checked, Physical Metallic Roughness Default. We need to turn on Tessellation. What tessellation is going to do is it's going to allow us to see height information on our 3D cube, which is going to allow us to see what we're doing when we're building our height map. So we're going to click Tessellation, and then we're going to get a Tessellation menu come up over here. From here, we have to go to Scale, and we have to give it some scale. If the scale is at 0, there's 0 height. If we put it way up to, say, like 50 or something like that, the height's going to be absolutely extreme, and we're not going to be able to see what we're doing. So for this cube, I'm going to set it to 2. Nothing happens, because we have no height information, but rest assured, we have now set the tessellation factor to 2, so later on we'll be able to see height information as it comes. So the first thing I'm going to explain, now that we have all of our stuff plugged in and we can see our cube, is that normally in Substance Designer we're going to want to build the height map first. And the reason for this is we're going to bake all of these other outputs based on the height information. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that as we go through. However, to start, I'm going to show you what a height map kind of is with a diagram that I quickly drew. So what a height map's going to be, actually, let's go into this first. This is an ambient occlusion map. It's got sticks, rocks, little bumps, and some kind of dirty areas here. And this was a ground. It was kind of a dirty ground forest floor type deal, or swamp kind of deal. You'll see that there's a whole bunch of information here on the ambient occlusion map, because the ambient occlusion map is for shadows and not for the height information. However, when I go to the same map's height information, you'll notice that everything in the height information has been blurred. There's actually really not that much discrete information in the height map, and there's a reason for that. So if I go to this, if you pretend when looking at this that the lower areas like this are pure black, and the highest possible areas like up here are pure white, and the in-between ones are varying shades of gray, this is what your height map would look like if you stared at it from the side of a piece of paper, say. So I've drawn these ones in red because these are things that you can't do on a height map. So if we have a flat color like this, a flat black, it's fine. And then if we slowly gradient it up into white, that's also fine, because your computer can actually project this information onto something. However, if you go straight up and down, this would be 100% white here to 100% black, 1 to 0, all in one go. Your computer actually doesn't have any information if you were to look at this from the side, if we were to turn this. And because it has no information, it's going to cause tearing. So we have to always put a gradient on things in the height map in order to prevent tearing. Another thing that you can't do with height maps is overhangs. So like this, you can't do that with height maps. It'll literally go just from here to here, and you'll have that tearing problem again. And that's because it's going top down. It's going top down, and whatever you put on top, that's the information that it's going to show. There can be no other information. So for example, if I have a rock and I put a stick on it, underneath that stick no longer exists. Yeah, and we'll go more into that, and you'll be able to see that as we go through with the program. So I'm going to quickly close these. So first things first that we're going to do with the height map is we're going to click space, and we're going to bring up shape, which is just this. This is the node, it's called shape. You can pick a pattern. We're actually going to leave it at square And the big thing that we're going to do with this is alter the scale, but on this one we're going to leave it at 1. I'm going to hit Control D, make another shape. This one's exactly the same, but on the scale on this one I'm going to plug in 0.8. Okay, I'm actually going to put this one below. So our next node that I'm going to introduce you to is actually it's probably the most used node in this program. It's the blend node. And this is a node, if you've ever used Photoshop, you can think of this in it's a lot like Photoshop. It's a lot like Photoshop in that you've got the layer that's on top, the layer that's on the bottom, and then you've got, if you want, a mask. So in this one we don't have a mask, but we do have a foreground and a background. I'm going to quickly plug the foreground into the top layer and the background here. And then I'm going to hit Add. Oh, sorry. Add 0.5. And that's going to make this type of box. From here, if I were to plug that into the height map, you will see that really fast. Yeah, that's 2. Tessellation factor. There we go. We have yeah. Our problem is we haven't plugged anything into the AO grayscale AO. Or maybe we have to cook this up. Yeah, that'll do it. Okay, now we can see it. So we had to hook this up into the AO parameter over here just so that we have shadows. Otherwise you can't see, even though the height was there. So I'm going to go quickly back into this. I'm going to return this to 2. You're still going to be able to see it. So we can actually see our problem here if we zoom in, because we've created that hard color here with no blur. This hard color drop from gray to white. So if we go into our 3D viewport here, if I were to, I'm actually going to crank this up a bit, just really quickly. I'm going to crank this to a 10, and you're going to see tearing. It can't decide what color to pick. And it also can't decide what really to do with it for shadow information and stuff like that, because it's literally just got a big drop where the computer hasn't received any information. So it's not looking very good right now. So really quickly, what we're going to do from that, actually we're gonna leave this really quickly. Let's move this back a little bit. We're going to continue adding our shapes, and then I'm going to show you how to fix it after the fact. Yeah, I think we'll do it that way. So one thing you can do from here is we can click our blend, hit space, and then we can hit blend again, and that's going to hook us up with another blend node, which is exactly what we want, although this one I think I want in the top input, and I'm going to delete the bottom input. So from here I'm going to click my shape, I'm going to hit Control D, I'm going to copy it. However, with this square, I'm going to make it a, I'm going to make it a 0.01, just this tiny little speck. And from there, I'm going to hit Control D, and we're going to have 2 of them. So we're going to click this one. We're going to type in transform 2D. This one is pretty self-explanatory as to what it does. And we're going to hit maybe 200%. We're going to apply width, and we're going to make it go all the way to the edge like this. And then we're going to hit angle. We're going to hit 45 and apply angle. And that's just perfect. We're actually, we're going to be making an X in program. This is, these shapes that we're modifying, this is kind of like a crash course on how to make simplistic shapes within, within the program. And after this, we're going to be importing a more complicated shape. There's a bunch of ways you can make shapes in this. This is kind of the simplistic way. We're going to go. We are going to use an alternate way to put in a more complicated shape onto the box later, ultimately. But for now, we're going to use this because it's nice and easy in program. So we're going to transform 2D, 200% of the width. We're going to apply that. We're going to go 45 again, and then I'm going to hit the 90, and we're going to make that. And of course, what we're going to do from this is we're going to make a blend node. I don't think it really matters which one is on top. We're going to add at 100%, and that's going to make an X, which is what we wanted. And from there, another node, invert grayscale. Now, I'm sure most of you can guess what this is going to do. It's going to invert the colors. So we're going to have a black X and a white background. From there, we're going to plug this into the blend, and nothing's going to happen because we haven't picked the right parameter on this one. And this one, instead of copy or add, we're going to pick subtract, and that's going to make a black interior and gray outsides with these. And as you can see, the tessellation is tearing because we still have not blurred this graph. So another thing that you may have noticed is white areas, again, are always higher and darker areas are lower. So if we look at this, the darkest areas are actually inset into the cube. Although this is starting to look kind of like what you might expect to see in some sort of science fiction crate, which is good. That's exactly what we want. So from here, we're going to hit this because we have to fix, and I'm going to type in blur, but we're going to get a blur high quality grayscale. So blur HQ grayscale, click, and we're going to put that to intensity 1. And now if we zoom in, firstly, if we were to zoom in on this, you're going to notice that everything has blurred significantly. But if we zoom in on this, you're going to notice that the tessellation information is now there, and we stop seeing so much tearing on the corners, which is exactly what we wanted. And now this is starting to look not terrible. It definitely looks like a box. That's exactly what we were going for. So for this, we're going to highlight all of these that we just did, and then I'm going to hit this frame button here, which is right in between the speech button and the pin button. We're going to hit that, and it's going to make a frame, and I'm just going to call that basic box. Perfect. And I'm going to set that and drag the whole thing. These are all actually part of it. You could drag them outside and then it'll get, but while they're inside you can drag the whole box, which is nice and neat, and yeah, it just keeps your program nice and neat while you're working. If you come back to it the next day, you can remember what you were doing. So from here we're going to go to the second way to import any shape really, but more complicated shapes into the program. This is the second way. There are other ways to make shapes in this program, but between these two you can get really far. Between basic shapes and complicated, and these more complicated shapes that I'm going to introduce you to, you can get really, really far. So what we're going to do from here is this is eventually going to blend. So we're going to take a blend node and put it there. That's going to disappear everything, but not for forever. We're actually going to leave that in the background slot because this is the big shape, so it will be the background in this blend node, and then we're going to put a foreground object in that momentarily. So what we're going to do for this foreground object is actually, I'm going to go, yeah. So I'm going to go downloads, and we're going to go, so what I did is I went to Google and I typed black and white spaceship into Google, and I got a JPEG of a black and white spaceship that was reasonably sized. When I drop this in the program, it's going to match it to 2048 by 2048 because that's the program size we're working in, and it's going to have it as a bitmap in the program. So I got this spaceship. I'm going to import the resources. Yep. And once that's in, if I click and we look, we totally have a spaceship. Although, did that... No, we want this. Oop, 2048 by 2048, and it's a bit stretched now, but that's okay. This is a learning exercise, so we're not gonna go make everything absolutely perfect. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna hit this. Oops, not the output. We're gonna hit this, and we're gonna hit grayscale conversion again, and that's gonna convert this. Yep. Into from a color information to gray information, because we're working with height. We don't need color information. And from there, I'm going to open this. This is the levels node. It's one of the more important nodes in this program. And when we open that, we'll notice that we've got a bunch of grays along with the blacks and the whites here in this, because we got it from online. So some of the colors are. There appears to be some sort of like pink in the original one for the background, and it's not bang on white and bang on black. We want this to be absolutely black and white. So I can see right here there's a little bit of information in the black, and I'm going to drag these just over this so that that no longer exists. And there's a lot of information here that's close to white but is not quite. So I'm going to drag these away from that, and now it should be a pure black and white photo after we do that levels edit. From there, we're going to open blur. Of course, it's too much. We're going to go back to 1. And now that everything's blurred, we won't have that tessellation tearing that we had the last time prior to the blur when we eventually map this onto our box. So from here, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it into the top so we see what it looks like. This blend is actually a subtract, I think. Is it? No, it's... So in this one we actually want switch. Yes? Switch. Sorry, on this one we want add sub, but not switch. I mistakenly put down switch. Add sub looks like it's going to be, let's see. Yes. Our best bet. So from here, you may have noticed it's a little big. It's bigger than I wanted. It's encroaching onto the side pieces here, which is not good. So we're going to fix that really quick with another transform 2D. From here, let's see what happens if we multiply, divide by 2. That's a better size. I actually think I'm going to go 150% after my division and apply both ways. And that looks like a good size, but we have overhanging on the sides now, so we're going to hit crop, and that's going to be crop grayscale, of course. And we're going to do this. Oop. And now put that into the top. We're gonna it's not liking being part of the chain. We're gonna crop that. Actually, we want background to go white, because then we can crop it much smaller. Don't worry about the sort of pinkness that we're getting here. That's no problem. That will be no problem when we're done with this, because we can just use the levels editor to take that out. And I'm actually going to try to map this so that the edges line up in the 3D view, so that we don't have any issues down the line. looks pretty good. And then we're going to do one more levels. And as you can see, we have some issues here. So I'm going to drag this all the way back, and issues gone, I believe, although we can probably do this as well. Let's see. Yeah, we can move this gray up and we can make it a little bit less of an indent so it's not so invasive looking. Well, that doesn't look too bad. And from here we're going to hit blur one more time so that we don't get tessellation artifacting, and we're going to go 1. These parts for me are going a little getting a little deep. So I'm going to move this back, and in between levels and blur, maybe if I go edge detect, we turn the roundness all the way down and we just turn the edge width. Zoom in. Let's actually turn the roundness up. I'm going to pick a good level for it. I think that looks actually pretty cool. Let's see, let's make it... Actually, let's unhook these really quickly. Edge detect, and then we're going to do another levels after edge detect actually. And let's we're going to go close to gray along the bottom. I guess we didn't need to move the gray slider at all. And that's going to make it not very deep, but still visible on the box. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Hook this up to the AO. Really quickly, after this blend, I'm going to throw in another blur at 1, just to make sure everything's nice and smooth and looks good. And that's not too bad. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to highlight all of this, go back to frame, rocket ship, or I guess that's a flying saucer. Yup. One more thing, this looks a little messy, so if we click this, it doesn't matter actually if you click it, and we hit Alt-Shift, we can move the nodes so we can see what they're doing. So, thus far we have, this is our finished product here. We have our height map, we have a box, it's got a logo. The logo is actually on all sides right now. I'm going to show you how you can fix that at the very end of the tutorial if you don't want the logo, but for now we're gonna leave it on because it's good to learn how to put complicated shapes into the program simply. Let's see, I believe we can delete the normal maps color. We can plug this into the normal, and then from there I'm going to crank this to about 20. And we're going to get some normal information going. Actually 20 might have been a little high. Let's go 10. 10 looks pretty good. We got some normal information. So there you have it. That's the first part of the tutorial, the height map information. We have made a box out of simple shapes, and then with a logo that's made out of a complicated shape that we imported into the program. I'm probably going to do another tutorial after this where we use this height information that we've just generated here to bake the base color, roughness, and metallic maps.